All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to the next in the instructional videos on how to catch bass at Lake Shasta and Clearlake, California. As hopefully you've seen in the last couple of videos, I talked a little bit more about the rods, reels, lines. And by the way, if you have any questions, go ahead and email me on this. It's not a problem. Again, this is only my opinion, but due to the success rate over the years, I think the opinion at least has some validity. Okay, that's why I'm bringing it up. And again, I have tournament fished in the past. Gave it up about, I don't know, 25 years ago. Left that to the pros, okay? Too much pressure. I like using this particular hobby to wind down and to relax, not to turn it into a job. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so I like to catch fish. That's what I like to do. I like to fool them, catch them on a non-live or non-reel bait. Yeah, use a little spray. Yeah, there's a bunch of sprays on the market you can spray your plastic with. I use a garlic spray. I have a shad spray that I use. There are many of them, like I say, on the market. I do squirt the lures with that to make sure that the gasoline or whatever that's on my hands doesn't rub off on the lure. I think that has some validity as to adding extra bites during the day. Okay, but fake bait and getting those fish to bite. So today I'm going to cover with you a bait that I have used for over, I've been trying to calculate this, it's got to be close to 40 years. Okay, it is my go-to bait when I have either a tough bite, a first bite, an active bite, especially in the main lakes in Northern California. I can tell you right now that I've caught fish on this bait in everywhere from the California Delta, okay, Clearlake, Berryessa, Lake Mendocino over near Ukiah, Blue Lakes between Clearlake and Ukiah. I think I said Berryessa, Folsom, Amador down in Amador County, Almanor up here in Butte County area, of course Shasta, Trinity Lake. It goes on and on and on. I've caught bass in all of those waters, and this is the bait I go to when I'm hunting and when I have the bite tuned in. Okay? It's not an easy bait to find. It's not an easy bait to find. This is not carried by your Walmarts. This bait is not carried by your Kmarts or your Dick's Sporting Goods. But I'll tell you what, if you want a soft plastic curl tail that is salt impregnated, hand poured, and has one of the best action curl tails on the market today, at least that I've seen on the West Coast, this is the bait, okay? First, I'll start with the hook process. As I said, for Shasta Lake especially, I use light line. I prefer 6-pound test lines. And I use straight mono. I've used monofilament. I've used polymers and all sorts of stuff. Get a good monofilament line and go out there, set your drag appropriately, have a ball. Okay, so here it is. The main lure is a little 1/8 ounce. I don't know, you call it a bullet head. You could call it whatever they call the teardrop head. 1/8 ounce teardrop head on a #1 hook. And as you can see, I hope in the video, I prefer the red hook. Okay? The red hook. Red hook appears in the clearer water to get more bites because, at least in my mind, the fish seem to bite better thinking that the fish might be hurt. Okay, so bleeding. So there it is. That's a small bait. That's why 6-pound test is great to throw this on. Tie it on with your favorite knot. Go to YouTube channels, teaches you a bunch of different knots. Whatever your best knot is, use a knot, tie it on there directly to the line, and you're ready to go. So what do I put on this hook? And by the way, I have actually caught bass in Shasta just with this. Okay? During March, April, and May, early May, sometimes when the feeding of these fish goes absolutely ape, you can actually catch it on a bare hook. It's the way these spotted bass react, okay? So what do I put on this thing? What's my go-to bait? And here it is, okay? It is a little salt and pepper, and hopefully you can see the blue neon, I call it a vein, okay? I call it a blue vein salt and pepper grub. This again is a hand pour. You can see the length of the tail and how curly that is. This thing moves. It's moving, as you can see with me just holding it. Wait till you get it in the water. This thing moves constantly, okay? Swimming around, okay? This is an amazing bait. And as I mentioned, I've been fishing this smaller version. There's two sizes of this bait. There is I think they call this the 3-inch, I believe. So anyway, I know it as the small. So this is the small, and they make a bigger one. Okay, that's about twice as wide and a little bit longer. They call that, I think, the 5-inch one. And I have caught, I use a bigger hook and a bigger weight on the larger of these grubs, okay? But that gives you a good idea of what this curl tail with the blue in it looks like. And I think that this bait is emulating a minnow, especially if you're in a lake with shad minnows, okay? Or even bluegill, using the bigger one, okay? The blue is shimmering in the light. When you see this in the sun, you can see this vein, as I call it, that runs down the center of this bait. It almost neon shines off that bait. And as I mentioned, the curl tail is constantly moving in the water, okay? As you can see, if you hold it still, it has the curl. Actually, you can see where the curl goes up, okay? So how do you put this on the hook? It's pretty simple. We'll go ahead and walk through the steps. So there's the hook. There's the curl with the curl going this way. So you simply take and put the hook into the top of the bait, and using your imagination, slide it on so that the bait hangs as straight as possible down the shaft of the hook, and there you go. Pretty simple. That wasn't one of my best hooks, placements, but I'll tell you what, I'd fish that right now. Here we go. Go out there and catch some fish. All right, and that's it. That is it. And this bait can be fished on the top. If you cast and reel it quickly, it'll propel her on the surface. You can fish it anywhere between the bottom and the top by simply casting out and reeling this bait back in to get that propeller action of the tail. Or I like to just cast it out, let it fall all the way to the bottom. Okay? And I'm normally fishing really between the first 5 feet from shore all the way out to about 20, maybe, deepest I probably fish with this 1/8 ounce bait's probably 20 feet, really, realistically. I have probably fished at 25, but for the most part, with 6-pound test, I'm fishing this thing between 5 feet and 20, 25 feet. Okay? Most of the bites I get on this lure are what I call stop bites. Stop bites. So what is a stop bite? A stop bite is you cast it out, let this thing fall like this, and the propeller's down to the bottom, right? And when it gets to the bottom and stops, you lift up just a little bit on the lure. If it feels heavy, and you'll get the feeling of this as you start fishing for these things, if it feels heavy, set the hook. And what I mean by set the hook is you give it a nice swift. You don't have to reel down and do the bill dance thing like you see on the TV shows, because we're not using big baits here. But simply go ahead and reel a little bit down, and then drive your arm in the upward position to make sure that you get that hook driven into the outside of that fish's mouth. Bass have very, very stiff upper lips. I like to call it stiff upper lip. So you have to get that bait, that hook through the lip. And these, a lot of these are either owner hooks, which are a very sharp hook, trust me, that are made with these, or you can pour them yourself on these jig heads. So they're not that difficult to pour. And get the little number 1 hook, little number 1 red hook, and make a bunch of these up. Okay, so the stop method, where you're actually letting it fall to the bottom, you lift up, you feel the weight. If there's a weight on the line, it's either on a rock or a fish's mouth. The only two things, or a tree. You're either stuck on something or you got it in the fish's mouth. Either way you look at it. And one thing about Shasta Lake is most of that lake is rock. Okay, most of the lake is rock. There are some trees. I mean, they cut a lot of them down when they actually put the dam in, right? But for the most part, it's rock. Every once in a while, there'll be a stump every so often. Yeah, okay. Suffice it to say that after a while, you'll actually get to be able to identify using this bait if it's on a rock or if it's in a fish. In a fish. The other thing you can do with this bait is cast it out and count down how long it takes for that bait to hit bottom. Okay, just do a 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. So if it takes 5 or 6 seconds for the bait to hit bottom, you cast it out and all of a sudden it stops moving in 6 seconds. Guess what? There's a fish on the end of that line. So what you constantly do with these baits, whether of course, if you're reeling it back in, they're going to attack. It's an attack position. It's a reaction bite. But if you're casting and letting it fall, is you watch the timing of that fall. Sometimes you'll even see your line go to the left or go to the right in the water. And you'll say, it ain't supposed to do that. So that way, of course, it's easy to tell. You got a fish on the end of the line. Go ahead and set the hook. Same thing with the countdown, and you know it's early, that it stopped. Yeah, fish got it. No doubt about it. And sometimes they're so aggressive that it'll never hit bottom. It'll never hit bottom. It'll go that 4 or 5 seconds, and they'll hit it 2-3 feet before it hits bottom. And then it's fun. I'll tell you that right now. With those rods that we talked about yesterday, the 6-foot little Shakespeare's rods, happens to be again my favorite. You get a 2-pound spotted bass on that son of a gun. Yeah, you know what's happening at that point. Okay, you really have to be careful about having that drag a little bit loose with a 2 to 3 pound spotted bass out of Shasta, especially when that lake water is between 55 and 65 degrees. Those fish are active. They're strong and they're ticked. Let's face it, they're upset, right? Because you've hooked them. So, yeah, that's a fun battle. So here's what they look like in the package, okay? I'll go ahead and put that up there. It's Keeper Custom Worms. A little family down in the Fresno area, Modesto area, Fresno area, in the valley in California. Still makes them, okay? And they come 10 to, the small ones come 10 to a pack, the small ones. And since I love this bait so much, I'll just tell you right now, I have almost 1,000 of these in reserve. Because they're not easy to find, I make sure that my reserve is stocked at all times. In case for some crazy reason, Keeper stops making these babies, I've got a backup supply. All right, I'm nuts, but that's the way it is. We had a fire back in 1989, and I remember telling the insurance company that I had, 2,000 rubber worms, and they said, yeah, right. Thank goodness I had videotaped all of our belongings prior to the fire, and was able to deliver them a proof that my tackle boxes were full, and there were 2,000 worms, and 10 fishing poles, and so forth and so on, so that I could prove to them that really I had that much. Yeah, fishermen are nuts, especially bass fishermen. There are a lot of other lures, don't get me wrong, okay? Bunch. But if you want one lure that you're going to take out to Shasta Lake in late March, nice warm March day, all the way through Memorial Weekend. All right, so you got March, all of April, and most of May. Right there, baby. Clearer the water, the better these work. Okay, better these work. The more minnows in the lake, the better these work. As I said, I've caught fish from the Delta, when the Delta is at least cleaner, to all the other Berryessa and Amador, Folsom, Almanor up in the foothills here, Trinity Lake for smallmouth, Shasta, of course, even Clearlake, when the lake is clear at Clearlake. And sometimes, believe it or not, that water has been clear. I lived there for, like I said, for many years, and I have seen that lake when it was clear to 15 feet, believe it or not. In a super cold, super drought year, with not a lot of runoff, Nice, Lucerne, I've seen that lake clear as a bell all the way to the bottom in 12 to 15 feet. So, not this year. So when it's clear like that, oh yeah, these will work. So clearer the better. We'll talk about other baits that are more successful in murky water next. But if you buy yourself a 10-pack of these, an 8 or 10-pack of these little 1/8-ounce #1 jig heads, tie that on to your 6-pound test line on your Shakespeare rod with your Shimano reel. Bass, baby, right there. All right? And and you can walk the shoreline, pick them up just as well as you can fishing from a mouth. A little easier in a boat. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's nice to have a boat with an electric motor. Yeah. But walking along the shoreline still works. My boat was out of commission for about 6 weeks in the spring of 15. And I had to do some shore walking because it happened in April, the prime time. And still caught a bunch of fish walking the shoreline with this baby. Okay? All right? Very good. Good for today. Have a great night, a great evening, great day. And we'll be back to you soon to talk about some other things that may help you catch more fish at Lake Shasta and Clearlake. Good night.